Hi, everybody. Welcome back. My name is Lindsay Bostwick, and I'm the Director of Artistic Planning here at the Arts Center at NYU Abu Dhabi. And we welcome you back to our career chats with the Arts Center staff. This program is part of our Off the Stage series, which during this time is all in a virtual space. And this particular program has been supported by the U.S. mission in the UAE as part of our youth engagement program, looking at different careers across the arts field with our staff here and questions from students like yourselves to watch now and on demand. So this week we are extremely thrilled to have Reem Saleh, our Associate Director of External Relations and Partnerships, as well as Clive Primrose, our Director of Marketing, to talk about their roles, their careers, and their life in the arts. And we welcome back our incredible NYUAD student, Bea Laszlo, to moderate the conversation. Put your questions in the chat, and here we go.
Hi everyone, welcome who is here with us today and who will rewatch this later. As Lindsay mentioned before, my name is Bea Laszlo and I'm a music student, third year student at NYU Abu Dhabi, and have been working with the Art Center as a producing intern since the beginning of September. I will be moderating our career chat today, where we will have two wonderful members of the Art Center, Clive and Reem. And so yeah, without further information from me, let me ask my first introductory question from our two guests, which will be, could you please introduce yourselves and talk a little bit about your journey leading up to your role at the Art Center at NYU Abu Dhabi?
Great. Should I start?
Yeah.
Thank you so much, and it's great to be here. My name is Reem Saleh, and as Lindsay introduced me, I'm the Associate Director for External Relations and Partnerships at the Art Center at NYU Abu Dhabi. I've joined the Art Center exactly a year ago, and it was during lockdown. I think it was during the first lockdown. So basically, I have been working remotely with the team for a whole year, which was quite interesting in so many ways. Prior to that, I worked for UNHCR, the United Nations High Commission for Refugees, in different missions in Riyadh and in Abu Dhabi. And I've been working also, I'm going backwards, as the Deputy Director for the Ajyal Film Festival for 5 years. I've done a lot of TV work, different roles between executive director, producer, production manager, and my passion always been and still is filmmaking. So I've done a documentary feature that was released in 2018 at the Berlinale Film Festival, and it's been touring the world since almost. So it's a social documentary that I shot in Cairo for over a period of 6 years. So yeah, and coming to the Art Center was actually a very natural progression to what I do, because I've worked in external relations. I'm also a filmmaker. I've been also working in arts organizations and leadership in the arts. So these experiences came together, and it's a very interesting fusion, and it kind of bring me to my role with the Art Center, which is really interesting. So I can interact with artists all the time, and also take the mission of the Art Center and translate it into partnerships, which is really getting the best of the two worlds. So yeah.
To follow on for Reem, thank you so much for the introduction. So I'm Clive Primrose, and my role at the Art Center is, to summarize it, to get people interested in coming to attend our events. Attending in today's world now means clicking a button and watching online, but getting people to engage. So within that, it's really why would people want to come and experience this? What are their interests? And how can we entice people to come and experience. And from there, how can we build deeper relationships with them and get them more engaged in the program? My background, I grew up in Johannesburg, South Africa during apartheid, and saw the fall of apartheid in 1992. It was nice to have been not nice to have been a part of apartheid, but I'm grateful the fact that I was still young when apartheid fell, so I could properly understand the atrocity that it was. And that has shaped a lot of my views in terms of culture and things in the world as a whole. From there, I worked in advertising, so I studied graphic design and worked in advertising. While I was studying and working, I always played a role in cultural events. I was DJing and throwing parties in nightclubs, pretty much. And then from there, moved to Dubai nearly 13 years ago now, and joined the Art Center 5 years ago. So that's a hard and fast summary of my 40 years on the planet.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you for your introductions and for talking a little bit about your journeys leading up to your role at the Art Center. My next question is quite simple, I guess, but also very complex. What made you decide to choose a career in the performing arts, or work in the performing arts? And was there a specific moment that made you decide that, yes, I want to be in this conversation?
I was thinking about this the other day. When I was 12 years old, my sister had her 16th birthday party, and I insisted that I should play the music for this party, which I did, and all her friends really liked. And from there, I've always been involved in the world of music and DJing, and from there, that then expanded and expanded. To then, when I was studying design and working in advertising, I always gravitated more towards cultural events per se, and did a lot of work for Dubai Tourism, the Department of Culture and Tourism in Abu Dhabi. So even my then professional life outside of performing arts gravitated more towards that. So then I felt I came full circle joining the Art Center, where my expertise in advertising to my love for culture and cultural events really came together. So that's really where it started for me. It was a long journey to sort of go full circle back.
Thank you. What about you, Reem?
I'm trying to remember. I mean, there are different points in which I knew that I wanted to be in this world, also as a performer, because I've done a lot of acting in the past. I've always been in theater for as far as I remember at school, and even afterwards. And the turning point to study it, because I studied radio, TV, and film, and we do theater as well in parallel at the Lebanese American University in Beirut, is when I won. There was a competition between all schools in Lebanon to analyze a scene of a film, and I won. And that got me a bit of money to finance my first year in college. And when I was doing the tour of university, because I've applied I wanted to study medicine as well. So I was really fascinated by the world of psychology, and at the same time, film and theater. And I applied to both, and I got accepted in both. And at some point we did a tour in the theater, and I saw the Thrust Theater. And people were talking about what they do on this theater, and some of the students spoke, some of the graduates and the professors. And I was like, this is what I want to do. This is really what I want to do. And I want to live in this theater. I want to spend my time here. I want to go running like these students with the camera. And that was then my life for the next 5 years. And if I go back in time, I would do it all over again. It has been a bit of a guide for me, because when you start working professionally, you don't necessarily work in what you initially wanted to do or your passion. So you go into different directions, but this also helps you become more focused. And coming back to the Art Center So I get to have the best of these worlds. We do films, we do performing arts, and I can also be a sort of an ambassador to these amazing things. So yeah, this is what led me to study film and work in theater and be here today.
Thank you. As I'm listening to both of you, I feel like what you're telling me is that your passions have united at the Art Center and at your role at the Art Center. You have talked a little bit about your roles at what you're doing at the Art Center. So my question is, since a lot of students are watching this, and I'm sure they would like to know more about your roles, could you tell me what's your favorite part of your job? If there's one specific favorite part that you would like to tell me. Do you want to? Yes, Clive, thank you.
What I love most is when a show is about to open and you see the queue of people slowly arriving and watching the anticipation slowly build and unfolds, the lights slowly dimming and the show beginning. I do really love that journey, watching it all unfold and then watching the response afterwards and the atmosphere and buzz after the show and walking through the lobby, overhearing the different conversations, debates, and topics of conversation that the presentation of this work has now sparked, and sort of knowing that people have left and these conversations are continuing in the car and at home afterwards.
Yes.
For me, I mean, I would love to identify with what Clive has just said, because I didn't get the chance to experience this as a member of the Art Center family. I did attend a few things with the Art Center, but I wasn't still in the family. But I can really identify with that thrill of waiting and observing the audience and this collective experience. But even with the virtual world, there are moments of magic that we experienced. For one, you know, when we went and did the shows virtually, we connect with people, and sometimes this energy can be felt collectively. And one of the nice things also about my job is that I do meet a lot of people virtually and sometimes in person to speak about what we do. And there is always this moment sometimes with people where you feel connected, where you feel, okay, this is a friendship that's going to last a lifetime with the Art Center, because they feel the passion and the feedback of the audience. When you watch a performance and it touches you so deeply, and then you feel that it resonates with so many people, you feel even that you're not in the same space physically, that you're in the same space virtually. And that you share the same emotions and the same experience. And in those times where it's been hard on us on so many levels, to have this connection is something that I really look forward to.
It's very interesting because I also talked with Lana and Lindsay, and they agreed with you, Clive, regarding the best part of a performance or of your jobs. And I've been working with the Art Center I started working during the online, like virtual performances. So I really feel you, Reem, as well. But I still remember the time when we had performances live, and I definitely think that it's a wonderful time when the audience members just gather, and that moment before the show where everyone's excited, both the people who worked on the show but also the audience members, just a wonderful moment. So we talked about the best parts of your job, but are there any difficulties or hardships that you're facing, maybe not on a daily basis, but once in a while, that you would emphasize here? Whoever wants to start. Reem, do you want to start now?
Sure. Within my role is to speak to people and convince them of our passion. And people sometimes, you feel that they fail to see that arts is part of our daily life. It's not something extra that we do. It's not just complementary. It's part of our daily life. No one doesn't listen to music. There's no one who doesn't watch films. There's no one, if you don't have arts, and this is said by Jordan Peterson, psychologist, we die. We cannot survive without it. And it's sometimes frustrating that we need to put this into perspective to make sometimes people understand that this is as essential as anything else that we do in life. Once we get to that point, it becomes really easier to integrate it in everything else that we do. So this is probably one of the challenging things about what I do, but at the same time, it's also a motivation, because you try to develop that language of communication so that you can translate this. And I work very closely also with Clive, who's really a guru when it comes to marketing and social media. And he also helps me translate these thoughts into something more accessible.
Thank you. What about you, Clive?
When the world went online, and I'm now referring to 2008, not now, when the financial crisis happened, people had less money to spend and online became favorable because it was cheaper to do. A challenge then was that marketing and advertising became very gimmicky because it was online advertising as a whole was very new. So I think a challenge for me is to not get caught up in the gimmicks of my trade, and to really focus on the key principles of advertising, which is you need to find people who are interested in what you have, and you need to find what those connections are and how to convince them to come. So I find that for me, I need to keep reminding myself that is what I'm here to do, and not get caught up in the latest Facebook gimmick or the latest TikTok dance trend, and that just keep that focus. That really is achieving that in today's world. That's the hard part, I suppose.
I guess as a follow-up question, because you both mentioned the online environment and going virtual, it was definitely a huge change for the Art Center and for the arts in general. How did your job change with the online performances or online season? And yeah, basically that would be my question. Was there any big changes that you would say were very difficult, or how was the connection different for you or to establish than in a normal season?
Reem, do you want me to start on that one? So for us to move everything online, that was the challenge. We had a season planned, lined up, and the first challenge was to let everyone know that we weren't being live, that we weren't going to be live anymore, and we had people who had bought tickets and whatnot. So we had a big communication challenge to make sure people understood why, what was happening, and what we were doing. And then within a month of us stopping live events, we launched our first virtual event. And that was just a lot of figuring stuff out. What could it be? What has worked before? What have we done before? What assets do we have? What skill sets do we have? And our technical team are legends in having figured out solutions very quickly. And then we just tried something and tried to make the best of it. And from there, it felt like a giant experiment, because then every show, every other thing we did, we would then as a team meet and say, what worked, what didn't work, what ideas are there, could we do this, could we do that? And even now, we're still experimenting. The rate of development in the online world has accelerated far more than I've ever seen. I built my first website in 1999. And it has always been an environment that has moved really quickly, but it developed at a fair pace that was okay to stay on top of. The speed at which it has changed now is ridiculous. And what worked a month ago suddenly doesn't work now. And we need to go back to the drawing board and rethink and rework and recheck, and YouTube are changing policies and guidelines. And so our Facebook, TikTok became a hit in that time. So we had to say, how do we be a part of that? What can we do on it that's meaningful to the business that we have? So I think that has been the initial challenge, and the ongoing challenge is the constant change that it is. And then even for the artists, the way in which they're presenting their work in different ways, in new ways. Then as marketing, I've got to think, okay, their work is presented this way. How can we get our audience to feel familiar with that? If it is quite different, how can we get them to want to partake? And then there's Zoom fatigue and everyone's on a screen all the time. And then we've had to rethink what time of day is best, to how long shows should be to. So it's this permanent, let's go back to the drawing board and figure things out. So that's the challenge.
Yeah.
Clive summed it up really nicely, so I really don't have much to add to it because I've joined during that time. I would just probably add to it that when it comes to partnership, it's exactly as Clive said, is also trying to translate and convince them how important the virtual world is. But in a way, it was also an advantage because we were able to reach out to entities and to people who wouldn't normally be able to attend because they don't live in the UAE. So that was probably one advantage, is having these, to foster these friendships and these relationships. But yeah, everything else is exactly as Clive mentioned.
Yeah, thank you. I definitely feel that as a student as well, that, you know, when the art center went online, it's just finding the timings, the perfect timings to have a performance. It's very difficult, especially with so many people just living in a virtual world right now. But I think the art center did a great job, and I attended a lot of performances, and it was wonderful. I have another question which Reem mentioned a little bit, and I wanted to ask. It's regarding the relationship between your jobs and your roles in the art center. What is the relationship between a marketing director and someone working with external relations, and how do your jobs basically connect in the art center? Yes, do you?
Clive,
Yeah.
do you want to start?
I wouldn't say it's how does my job and Reem's job connect. I think as the art center, and what I think introduced earlier, we all really have to work closely together, and that's across artistic planning to producing to the technical team to Reem, and especially now. So something didn't work on a show, something did work on a show. And then Reem and I having a conversation, okay, do we need partners here? What do we do here? And there is a strain on things because my office isn't next door to Reem's anymore. You know, as much as the online world seems to make people available, I feel it also creates some distance that we need to be conscious of managing. That what are these things? And then we've got to set up different workflows so that our life doesn't exist in email, and that because email's a pain. So yeah, finding solutions and then being able to fulfill them in a way that doesn't inundate our inboxes, and be able to get it done, and in today's world, get it done really quickly. So that's sort of the constant being in communication with each other.
Thank you. What about you, Reem? Do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, it's that. What's really nice about the team. I mean, we're a small team, in comparison to the amount and the things that we do, you would think that there's probably 100 people behind that, but we're a small team. We communicate regularly, and that's very important. We share everything. There's a lot of transparency in what we do. So we share everything with each other, and everything is connected. So I work with several people. And I work a lot also with Clive, because marketing and external relations are not far from each other. The strategy is almost the same. So there's a show, we need to talk about it. So we have the vision that is translated into different languages. So we have the show. So what does the show talk about? Who would be interested in it? How can we translate this to schools? How can we translate this to other partners? How can we translate this to the community? So here comes marketing, here comes social media, here comes external relations, but it starts with a vision, and then you have the show, and then you have the breakdown of the show all the way to the audiences, and we have different audiences like the schools. And with schools, what's really amazing, because this is also a translation of the same show, it also depends on what they're studying and how can we integrate what they're studying with this specific performance, or what they have been working on as a theme at some point. So it becomes a bit an extracurricular activity that is complementary to their academic work. So that's the beauty of it, because you can do so much. It's like you spread those magic sparks, whatever they are, everywhere from one specific show and translate it into so many beautiful bits.
Thank you so much. Before we continue, just a reminder to everyone who's here with us today that if you have any questions from our two guests, please feel free to leave it in the chat box, and then I will read it out. And in fact, there is one question that is coming from one of our students here. What has kept you motivated in your respective roles during this challenging time of the pandemic? Reem, do you want to start?
Yeah, wow, that's a really great question. To start with, I will start with myself. I wanted to stay connected. So, and I would have gone mad if there wasn't the art center and these performances, and to be connected, because I felt that I could identify, but also to stay connected with the audience, most importantly, in those times, so that we are collectively experiencing something that is extremely unique and historical, and many of us are alone. So to have this collective experience and stay connected with the audience is important. And our commitment to the artists. And that's really crucial, because artists and many people, many jobs have been affected so badly by the pandemic. People have lost their jobs. Some people do not have a stable income. Artists have been really affected, because they don't go to a 9-to-5 job and have a paycheck at the end of the month. They really rely on tours, and their tours have been canceled. So our role at the Art Center was also to make sure that there is still working. And so overall, it becomes a mission and an ethical commitment coming from the leadership of the Art Center all the way to everyone on the team.
Thank you. Do you have any thoughts on this, Clive? What has kept you motivated?
And for me, it stems back to choosing to study design. I started doing business, and a year into that, I was bored of writing exams in economics. I do feel that having done that has served me well in my future career. But I chose design because I found it would be interesting, and every project has its challenges. As much as there is a process or method to it, everything is different. And that's what keeps me motivated, has always kept me motivated, and now is each show we do, be it live or online, has challenges associated to it. So it's finding solutions and simple solutions to those challenges. And that's what I really enjoy about the job as a whole.
Great. Thank you so much for your answers. Meanwhile, we have two more wonderful questions from our attendees. So let's start with the first one. I will read it out. So one of our attendees is wondering if there were interest experiences that you had in high school that help you with your roles at the Art Center now. Great question.
Yeah, high school has been the reason I'm doing what I'm doing, because I've experienced theater at school. And when I say theater, is this whole importance of the collective work, of working as a team, of being creative together, of having this experience together. And that word has been fascinating for me. And at the same time, extremely important to develop my communication skills. Because acting or working in theater is not only about becoming an actor, it's also developing all sorts of other skills. So I was more confident in public speaking in class, because I knew, because it's also technical, you know, acting is technical, how to stand, how to use my voice, when to do, you know, these pauses. So that is quite crucial. And when we had university students, film students visit my school to explain to us how to analyze a scene and how a scene in a film is broken down and how the camera is placed, I was like, oh my God, this is magic. I never thought about it. And that stayed with me. And I was like, this is what I want to do. So yeah, I owe a lot to these years. And this is, and most importantly, to the professors who encouraged this, who allowed us to experience these worlds, to develop our own skills, to develop our own self-confidence, to use these skills not only to work in arts particularly, but to use them as tools in leadership, communication, and everything else. So I owe a lot to these years, definitely.
Great, thank you. Clive?
For me, the second language in South Africa is Afrikaans. And I had to work out grades. South Africa's school system works differently. So in 10th grade, my Afrikaans teacher, I'd play chess with him. And then at the time I was already learning guitar, and he encouraged me to go and start learning piano as well. So he really sort of pushed me down to say, Clive, you have an interest in music. And he encouraged me over our conversations playing chess to go and pursue it further and further. And then from there, he introduced me to another guitar teacher who I did lessons with for a while. And then I continued piano lessons. I then favored guitar more and focused on that more. And it's only recently that I've started piano lessons again. But it was really one teacher who just saw I had an interest in something and helped push me to pursue that interest.
Thank you. We have one more question from one of our attendees. So you both mentioned that you had work experience outside of the arts before coming to the Art Center and before starting to work in performing arts. So were there any transferable skills that you learned in those other jobs that you are using now in your arts jobs?
So my role is interesting because I work in performing arts, but what I do every day is what I've done for the past 20 years of my life. And that's advertising as a whole. So that I feel I've got to refine it more to a sector where I was working in advertising. My clients were from working on Egypt Tourism Authority, advertising Nile cruises, to launching the latest Audi, to helping HSBC launch their Islamic offering to the UAE. So that said, the breadth of clients that I worked on, I have a very, very broad knowledge of different industries, different sectors, different target audiences, different approaches to things that I draw on all the time for the work that I do now. So, you know, there is the cultural sector specifically. So Egypt Tourism Authority, I find a lot of similarities on advertising a tourist destination to advertising the arts. There's similar interests or motivations that I can find in people to convince them to come. But then at the same time, when you have a large telco, like I worked in Saudi Arabia for a long time, advertising Saudi Telecom, the challenge there was that it's a very fast competitive market. And if the competition come out with an offer, within 2 or 3 days, you need to be in the market with the competing offer. So things like that taught me how to be really fast and be responsive, that this is happening now, we have something, how can we do something quickly and get it going now? So it taught me to be pragmatic, to be fast, and gave me a breadth of knowledge across multiple sectors.
Thank you.
For me, I mean, I have a similar experience as Clive because I've been living in the GCC countries for a long time. I've been here in the region for 13 years. And the beauty of that is that you get a very thorough understanding of the culture. And when you work in arts, you need to be also very conscious and aware and respectful of the culture that you're part of. And this has helped me, this experience over the years working in arts and being in this region, helped me understand the nuances when we are talking about a certain performance or when we are reaching out. It makes a big difference when you understand the culture, and you're also part of it because I'm an Arab. But each region has its, there are more details to it. And I learn continuously. So in my job, there's also a big chunk of it, which was humanitarian. I worked in the humanitarian and I worked in arts. And for me, they're not so different because what is arts is also a reflection, does not necessarily have to have a message, but it's an experience, it's storytelling in different languages. Language, when I'm talking about the language of art, it could be music, it could be a concert, it could be a song, it could be a performance, but it's coming from a place within that you translate, that you turn into a story in a very creative manner. So I continuously learn about the importance of storytelling and humanitarian together, because one is the voice of the other. And we've seen it in also some of our work. There are strong messages, there are social messages, there are personal messages, personal experiences. So that's something I continuously learn, and my experience of working humanitarian and arts and art leadership, knowing the audience, is an accumulation of what I'm doing now, and continuously try to learn as we grow.
Thank you so much. Those were actually very, very interesting answers, and I can see how much you've transferred your skills from previous jobs and that you're using them right now in your arts center roles. I have 2 more questions, which are less related to the jobs, more related to you personally, I guess. So the first one is, what is one? In your artistic practice, are there any values that are really important to you and that you strive to keep? This is the first question. Clive, you want to start?
So it stems from the way I introduced myself, from growing up during apartheid and seeing apartheid collapse. So those are views that equality as a whole, and something that, you know, I have 2 daughters, and just things that I choose to raise them, how I choose to raise them, and the values I instill with them. So equality as a whole is something I stand for.
Thank you. What about you, Reem?
For me, I will go to my experience as a documentary filmmaker. And there's a big responsibility when you share people's stories. And there's an ethical value to it. And probably one thing that I always try to keep when working with people or sharing their stories, also when I'm sharing the artist's stories, and I want to talk to partners about it, is to understand where it's coming from, not to judge, and this is important, and to carry the message with in a very precious manner, not to use it to convince the audience, not to have an emotional push or to make my subject look like they're victims. No, to share a story as it is without judgment for us to understand and not to judge. And this is probably the ethical point that I was carrying with me. And also, I do not believe in being completely distant when you work with art and artists, or when you work with actors or with your crew. I don't believe it's like, okay, they shared their story, this is what I want, and I will take a step back because I'm not involved in this. No, if there's something that you could stop that is not good, then as an artist or as a filmmaker, I should do it. And if there's something that I could do to help, I should definitely do it. I'm not only here to film and go and make profit of the project. No, I'm here to share an experience with them. And this has also a lot of ethical commitment to the time and the personal stories that people shared with you.
Thank you very much. I have another question, which is, what is one advice you would give to those students who are thinking about a career in the arts? Is there one specific thing that you would advise them to do? Reem, do you want to go first?
Intern, volunteer, watch as many performances as you can. You don't, because you're drawn to this world because it's something that you really particularly like, music, performance, whatever it is, but it might not be just that. So the more you intern into this world and or volunteer, the more you learn about the backstage as well. And you might find a passion somewhere in backstage, not necessarily as a director or as a performer. So this makes a big difference. So do that, and don't miss an opportunity to hang out with artists, to be backstage. If you're watching a performance, go and talk to the actors afterwards. If you get the chance to attend workshops, also do it. It will give you hints about the skills that you need for a specific discipline. And you might like to do that more or not, or decide to do something else. But you need to be exposed to this and then decide as you go.
Following on that, it's with that exposure, it's hard work. And what I mean is being successful at anything in life is hard work. The arts is no different. If you want to be a successful attorney, it's going to take a lot of hard work. If you want to be a doctor, it's going to be hard work. Yeah, so it's exactly the same. Put in the effort, learn, try, and keep pushing, and yeah, the results will come. So it's hard work just like anything else. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I think these are very good advices. And even me as a student, I always like to ask this question because I just want to learn from you as well what you're thinking regarding this question. I promise you there will be 2 more questions, but there's actually an extra one that I just saw in the chat. So I'm going to ask that as well. Is there a performance that you remember watching as an audience member that you can point to and say, seeing this changed my life?
Oh, I just joined the Art Center, and I think it was the second show I was a part of at the Art Center. And it was a show called Disco Manila. We brought out a Filipino disco band. And as part of this, with the marketing, we had sorted out an interview with them at the Filipino radio station in Dubai. So I drove the band there and spent a fair amount of time with them. And in that, we shot a small documentary. So my interaction with the band and the members who came with them was amazing. And what I loved about the show itself is the power that disco music had to bring people together. That at the show, no matter where people were from, what they did for a living, everyone was there and they had a really good time. And then in speaking to them, it was interesting where the formation of this band happened. And it was during political unrest in the Philippines. And they'd used disco music as a means to unite the people. And I always loved that story. I mean, there's a far deeper historical story to that, but to summarize it up, and I've always respected that of Filipino culture, that things were really hard, yet they found a way to stay happy and had disco music that they still danced to and still stayed happy no matter how bad things got in the country. And I've always respected that. Yeah.
Thank you. I wish I could see that performance. What about you, Reem? Do you have any specific performances that?
Yeah, well, I'm just remembering now because as Clive was talking, and because I have so many points in my life where a certain performance or a certain film affected me in a way. But there was this specific performance directed by a Lebanese theater director. His name is Roger Assaf, and he does experimental work. And he has this an amazing performance, and it was called Jnainet al-Sanaya Garden, which is very important public garden in the heart of Beirut. And it was very difficult, but at the same time so accessible, extremely emotional. They were a small troupe who didn't have a lot of money for marketing and advertising, and they would do one performance, but it's so good that it continues for months because it's word of mouth. And this is when I was also introduced that there's more to theater than the classic plays that we did at school. And because my brain works in not such a linear way, and I was like, this works with the way my brain functions, because the stories are so not linear, but at the same time you can understand them and feel them. And I became obsessed with this troupe, and I would follow their work wherever they go, and one of their actors as well. And I was so inspired that I wrote a short film with the protagonist as the main actor of that play, because he played with a lot of passion. So yeah, that was a turning point for me to understand that there's more to theater than just the classic plays. And that's also so powerful and so accessible and extremely emotional.
Thank you very much for sharing these. And I think these recollections show perfectly how powerful the arts are and the performing arts are. And even if it's online or hopefully soon we're going to be in person again, the power of the arts will always be there. Thank you so much for joining me. I think this will be our last question for today. Thank you for sharing your stories. And I will hand it over to Lindsay now for the last remarks.
Thanks so much. I feel like I've learned so much, both about all of you here in the room and just about reminding me how incredible, powerful moments as you're growing up start to kind of coalesce, and your role here is really a summation of everything that you've done. So thank you so much, Bea, for these incredible questions, and for everyone in the chat and in the live room. To Reem and Clive for sharing your stories, and for all of you. We hope you'll tune in next week for our very last career chat of this series, which is with Christian Lear, our Director of Business Operations, and Subin Thompson, our member of our sound team, to share their stories. So we hope that you'll watch this again. And thank you so much to the U.S. Mission in the UAE for the support of this program. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.